What's up, Bills Mafia? Ryan Thomas here of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, bringing you another episode of the show. This is my third guest of the day. He needs zero introduction. You won't see this guest's identity, you won't see his face, but you will remember and know his name as the Bruce exclusive, Bruce Nolan, Buffalo Rumblings. I've wanted this man on the show for a long time. Finally, we're making it happen here to discuss the 2020 season that was for the Buffalo Bills, as well as a discussion in regards to the 2021 offseason to date. So, Bruce Nolan, thanks for joining me on the show, buddy.
Dude, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Of course, yeah. And as far as this show and this show goes, we'll dive into the offseason, of course. There's a lot to discuss. But, Bruce, I want your take. I want your opinion on what did the 2020 season that was for the Buffalo Bills, what did it mean to you? What did it prove to you come season's end?
To me, it meant that the Buffalo Bills had finally realized their potential. And I don't mean that there's not still things they can accomplish. That's not what I mean. But for so many years during the drought, it was really a one or the other. You had a good offense or you had a good defense. For a lot of good defenses got wasted by not having good offenses. And the Bills finally put up a really good offense for the first time since probably 2002 with Drew Bledsoe. And they got a competent enough defense that for finally for Buffalo Bills fans, it was like, okay, it's all coming together. And it's not just about the quarterback. I understand that we can all say, well, it's Josh Allen. He was the big reason why it happened. But there's plenty of offenses that have managed to kind of limp along for a year or two with less than stellar play. I mean, the Chan Gailey Buffalo Bills with Ryan Fitzpatrick, Stevie Johnson, David Nelson, and Donald Jones were able to squeak along for a brief minute. But that defense was terrible too. So even when we got middling, mediocre offenses occasionally, the defense was so bad it just dragged it down. So for me, it's about finally getting that sigh of relief that comes from, okay, it's a fairly complete team. Everything seems to be firing on the same cylinders because so much of the drought is bad luck and bad timing. It takes more than just organizational incompetence to go that long. It's more than just incompetence. It's also bad luck. It's bad timing. It's not having a good offense. For goodness gracious, you can squeak into the playoffs with horrendous offense and horrendous defense. For goodness sake, the 9-7 Buffalo Bills that made the playoffs and backed their way into the drought, then that team wasn't really good on offense or defense the first year. So it's just amazing to me that out of all the things that could have gone right for the Bills at some point to break the drought, it didn't happen. But for this Buffalo Bills team, it was the first time in forever, it seems like, that you look back and go, okay, it's all coming together. And that's what it meant for me for Buffalo Bills in 2020.
You feel like they finally proved their potential. They finally achieved a season that it was nothing to just write off. I think this is the start of something really special. This is the start of something that we'll look back on, Bruce, 5, 6, 7, 10 years from now and say 2020, that weird year with this awful pandemic, a year that none of us could really go to the games, a year that was just so uncertain and so unprecedented, was the beginning of a Buffalo Bills, dare I say it, dynasty. I mean, I think that this team is set for many years to come to be a contender. Whether that leads to, the word dynasty is usually antiquated with championships and winning championships consecutively. But, the Bills, I guess, of yesteryear could be considered a dynasty too, in the sense that they went to 4 straight AFC title games, won them all, represented the AFC in those 4 straight Super Bowls. What do you see as the potential for this team moving forward? Do you think this 2021 team has what it takes to be a Super Bowl contender?
Absolutely. I think as long as you have a good quarterback and you have a good coach, you've got a shot. There have been lots of franchises that have built entire significant stretches of success around just the quarterback and the coach. New England did it. Kansas City's doing it. New Orleans did it. Green Bay did it. Andy Reid did it in Philadelphia with Donovan McNabb, where they went to 4 straight NFC championship games, ended up making a Super Bowl. If you have a good coach and a good quarterback, you've got a shot. At that point, it's a matter of how talented that team is. A ball bounces here and there every single year. And that's a big part, a huge plurality part of winning. So as long as the Bills have Josh Allen playing at his 2020 level, now that's important. We have 1 year of statistically significant data that indicates Josh Allen is a really good quarterback. Because in my opinion, 19 Josh Allen was not a really good quarterback. 18 Josh Allen was not a really good quarterback. 2020 Josh Allen was a very good quarterback. If you continue to get that level of play and you have a coach who I think is a really good coach in Sean McDermott, who's constantly evolving, then you've got a shot. It's very exciting because it's not just about the fact that the Bills achieved something. It's about why they achieved it. So when you achieve success in 1 year because you happen to have a statistically outlier season or a dominant defense for 1 year and you sneak your way into the playoffs, well, congratulations, you did it, but it doesn't necessarily give you hope for the future. Hope for the future comes from stability at quarterback and stability at coach. And that's the reason why Buffalo Bills fans can be optimistic. It's not just the fact that they were good. It's why were they good? And the method by which they achieve success is something that has historically shown to be sustainable. We saw the Miami Dolphins win 10 games last year with turnovers, really, really good defensive play, special teams touchdowns. I don't have nearly the hope if I'm a Dolphins fan that I do if I'm a Bills fan. Even though the gap between the two of them was 3 games. Dolphins won 10 games. Bills won 13 in the regular season. But it's a lot bigger than that because you can't count on those things sustaining themselves for the Dolphins. But you can count on a more likely probability that the things that made the Bills successful in 2020 will continue on. So it's very exciting, not just because they were good. It's because of why they were good.
That's a great take. I love that. And to get, a kind of more your thoughts on that whole trust the process as far as us trusting the process moving forward. You touched on Sean McDermott and why you like Sean McDermott and what you think of Sean McDermott. Basically, why do you like Sean McDermott? What is it about McD that makes you believe in him as the coach of this team?
Continual improvement. Sean McDermott did not arrive at this organization as someone who was overly aggressive on 4th downs. He was not someone who arrived here that was necessarily overly analytics focused. But when he preaches to the team that growth mindset is important, constantly trying to just get better, and then he doesn't go out and do that himself, he turns into a huge hypocrite. And at that point, it erodes his ability to lead. But one of the reasons why people are willing to follow him is because he practices what he preaches. He decides, you know what? I think I'm a weak game day coach. I'm going to hire an assistant coach to specifically help me with timeout usage and challenges. And it was so much better in 2020 than it was in 2019. Going into, it's so good we forget to talk about it, Ryan. That's how good it got better. It's so good that I feel like nobody talks about it. Sean McDermott was not a good game day coach for the first couple of years.
I would agree with that. I agree with that. I could agree with that.
Yeah, his best work happened during the week, not on game day. I'll never forget that the punt in the snow game against the Colts, playing for a tie when a tie knocks you out of the playoffs, that's a fireable offense. Now, it happened to work out in the case of the Buffalo Bills, but there was no guarantee it was going to. Mm-hmm. And the fact of the matter is Sean McDermott would never do that now because he's evolved. He's learned. And I don't see why that would stop. I don't see why Sean McDermott would magically say, well, that's it. I've arrived. I'm as good as I'm going to be. Guess I don't have to read any more books anymore. Guess I don't have to study. Guess I don't have to get better. No more introspection for me. I'm good. I'm fine. Thank you. Go serve that to somebody else. We're all tapped out of introspection now. That's not going to happen for Sean McDermott. He's going to keep getting better. And that's the thing that gives me the confidence, maybe is the word. It gives me the confidence that he's a good coach, and he'll probably continue to be a good coach because people like that don't have the game pass them by. Do you know who doesn't focus on continuous improvement? Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll is the same guy he's always been, and he got Russell Wilson, and he got a really, really, really good draft class a couple years in a row, a decade ago. He's been living off of it since. And Pete Carroll doesn't continuously evolve. I got absolutely lambasted last offseason for having Sean McDermott higher on my coaching tiers than Pete Carroll. People lit me up like the 4th of July, Ryan. Now all of a sudden, don't look so crazy anymore. I'm just saying, the people who have the game pass them by are the people who never look inside themselves and go, what do I need to get better at? What am I missing out on? And I don't think it's in Sean McDermott's DNA to ever say, that's it. I've arrived. I'm done. And that's the thing that gives me confidence in him moving forward.
I love that take. I applaud it. I feel like you hit the nail on the head there in the sense that I couldn't say his rookie season, rookie meaning his first season as an NFL head coach, that he fully took the reins of the team the way that he has, obviously this past season and the season prior to that. I truly feel like this is Sean McDermott's team just as much as it is Josh Allen's team. And as you said, great head coach, great quarterback. That it seems to be the common denominator in what makes a team great, whether it's Belichick and Brady or Tomlin and Big Ben, or, I would say in the sense that Pete Carroll was able to take advantage of the situation that he had, took advantage of it, but didn't really evolve, to your point. If you do have that defensive-minded coach with a quarterback that can do a lot of things physically, in the sense that McD is a defensive-minded coach, Allen is a quarterback that can do things that no other quarterback can do, especially given his size. I think that's what really lets the fans know, wow, this guy is special. This guy is different. It's a quarterback that's 6'4", 6'5", 240 pounds, and he runs like a deer. I mean, it's unbelievable in terms of his speed inside the pocket, his speed outside of the pocket. What is your assessment? I know you touched on Allen's improvement. He wasn't a great quarterback his rookie year, certainly wasn't a good quarterback his sophomore year, but his quote-unquote junior year in the NFL, he was an MVP candidate. He was right in the thick of it with Aaron Rodgers. Do you expect Josh Allen to only get better from here, or do you see some peaks and valleys still left to be seen in his career?
Every quarterback has peaks and valleys. Mm-hmm. Every quarterback. Aaron Rodgers had valleys the last couple of years relative to his peak. So I don't think we should necessarily freak out if Josh Allen has a slight regression this year, because quite frankly, he was so good in 2020 that a slight regression still puts him great. That's the truth. A slight regression from 2020 from Josh Allen still makes him great. That's how good he was in 2020. So for me, it's not necessarily about maximizing and continually getting better, because at some point you can't really get any better for Josh Allen. Now you keep working on it, you keep trying, but you can't really expect someone to be, he's a 4,000-yard passer. Well, next year he'll be a 5,000-yard passer, and the year after that he'll be a 6,000-yard. Like, that's not how that works.
Right.
At some point you're not going to pull that off. But
at some point you reach your limit. You're
exactly
at your cap. Yep.
But for me, it's about, does he hit the threshold of this guy is worth a franchise quarterback contract you can win a Super Bowl, due in large part to the fact that he's your quarterback? Is that still true? And as long as that's still true, then there might be fluctuations within that. But if he's in this is a franchise quarterback bucket, I can win the Super Bowl because this guy's on my team. Not win the Super Bowl with this guy on my team. I can win the Super Bowl because this guy's on my team. If you are in that bucket, then yeah, there's going to be some fluctuations inside that bucket, but you're still a really good quarterback, and I'm still happy to have you on my team.
So the difference between Trent Dilfer and Tom Brady is what you're saying.
Absolutely. The Brad Johnsons of the world, the Joe Flaccos of the world, right? Are you winning a Super Bowl in spite of him or because of him? And that matters. That's a big difference. And if you have the spot where, listen, we're a contender because this guy's on our team, as long as that's the case, Not every year is always going to be better than the last. There's going to be peaks and valleys within that. But if you're a Super Bowl contender because this guy's on your team, I'm good with it.
I love it. I love it. And based on your assessment thus far, do you believe that Allen is that guy? Do you think that he is that guy that will allow the Bills to win a Super Bowl one day based on what you've seen so far? Or do you think that there is, it's too early to tell?
Allen was that guy in 2020. Allen was that guy. He was absolutely that guy in 2020. The Bills, he played well enough in 2020 to be on a Super Bowl team. He did. Now, is he going to do that in 2021? I have no idea if he's going to. Right now, our statistically significant sample size for Josh Allen is 1 year of really, really good play. One. So that's it. So the longer he does it, the more confident you are he's going to continue to do it. And that's completely fine. So right now, I'm dealing with 1 year. Now, you have confidence because you've seen him grow over the course of his first 3 years. So it wasn't like he was terrible, really good. Now we're afraid he's going to go back to terrible. He went from a player who was not effective at all in 2018, aside from running the ball and hitting a couple deep shots to Robert Foster, and still had a bunch of issues. He was not a good quarterback in 2018 to a quarterback who was still a below average passer in 2019, but was, again, tremendous as a runner, which I always said he was below average as a passer in 19. He was tremendous as a runner, which kind of evens out to Right. So my onomatopoeias for Josh Allen in 18, it was in 19, it was and in 2020, I was hoping for that was what I was hoping for. So we went from to but we actually went farther. We went farther in 2020 than we had to. I was only hoping we would get to Instead, we went to hey. That's what we got from Josh Allen.
Yeah,
so
that's
we got
true.
A big jump from Josh Allen. So the fact that there's a progression with Josh Allen kind of gives you a little bit more confidence than if it was just terrible, really good, terrible. It's things like that. So when you look at the things that Josh Allen got better at, and you start grinding the tape and you start saying, okay, mechanically, he's different than he was. Well, okay, that's a pretty good reason to be good. It's like I said before, it's not a matter of were you good, it's why you were good. Well, the same thing applies to Josh Allen as applies to the Bills as a whole. Why was he so much better in 2020? And when you look, you might look from the outside in, you see this from people who don't follow the team. Well, it's just Stephon Diggs. No, it wasn't.
Right.
Watch the tape. It was not just Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs doesn't hurt. Let me tell you, it doesn't hurt to have a player like that. But it wasn't just Stephon Diggs. Watch the tape. He does things better than he did them before. It wasn't Brian Daboll concocting some sort of gimmick offense to give Josh easy throws all over the place. Brian Daboll's offense isn't even that quarterback friendly.
Right.
It's kind of like throwing somebody in the deep end, and he still succeeded.
I'm so thankful that you said that. You're the only person in the Bills Twitter sphere that is willing to admit that. Like, that's the first, and I completely endorse that take in the sense that Daboll's offense is not quarterback friendly. Daboll's offense forced Allen to do far more than even the Mahomeses of the world, because Buffalo didn't even have a running game this past season. So, I mean, that's another topic too that we can dive into, but what is it about Daboll's offense, in your opinion, that makes it not as quarterback friendly to Allen? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, it doesn't create easy binaries as often as other quarterback-friendly systems do. If you look at things like Matt Nagy in Chicago and what he did for Mitchell Trubisky, is he created easy binaries. A lot of RPOs, a lot of packaged plays, a lot of this, then this, or this and this. Makes the decision-making really easy. In addition to that, you don't have as much control at the line. And so with the Earhart-Perkins system that Brian Daboll runs, a lot of it is based on pre-snap recognition of man and zone. If it's man, your man beater route concept will be on the left side of the formation. If it's zone, your zone beater route combination will be on the right side of the formation. A lot of it's based on these types of ideas. These ideas that you have to be able to know pre-snap whether this is man or zone, or you're going to be all screwed up. With really simple binary RPO-based systems like the one that Doug Peterson used with Nick Foles when he was in Philadelphia, and what Matt Nagy ran with Mitchell Trubisky to help kind of limp him along to have a little bit more successful Pro Bowl even season was let's make this easy on the quarterback. Let's just give him real simple things. Let's let you read one player. Give you this RPO. Hey, give you this package play. Just count the amount of people in the box, right? If it's 6 or less, do this. If it's 7 or more, do this. Real easy binaries that don't rely on your ability to actually diagnose coverage pre-snap. So what Brian Daboll did do was he gave Josh Allen a little smattering of everything. There's some RPOs in there. There's some play action in there. Josh Allen was one of the best quarterbacks in the league off play action, which is great, but it's not necessarily quarterback friendly. Now, because it's not quarterback friendly, you have to understand that quarterback friendly systems have a skill limit. They can only take you so far. At some point, in order to keep up with the defenses, the quarterback's going to have to take you there. So Brian Daboll's system has a higher ceiling than the Matt Nagy systems of the world, but it also has a lower floor. So what you saw from that was Josh Allen the first couple of years in Brian Daboll's system. They're figuring it out together, what works, what doesn't work. But Daboll essentially threw him in the deep end and said, this is big boy quarterbacking, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to throw from the pocket. There's going to be all sorts of plays. There's new plays in every single week. There's QB power in there. There's RPOs. There's read option. There's package plays. There's downfield concepts. There's multi-level reads. There's all sorts of things that you have to make sure you're being variance with. And Josh Allen, year 3, figured it out. I mean, we talk about what a great athlete Josh Allen is. We forget about how high his Wonderlic score was, and we forget about how well he did on the board. Yep. When he got in the whiteboard at the combine, teams really thought highly of his ability to process and diagnose information. So Brian Daboll's like, you know what? I'm going to throw him in the deep end. He's going to probably be completely lost for a little bit, and that's okay. But I'm not going to dumb this offense down to make it more palatable for you so I get to keep my job.
Right. Yeah, and to your point, as far as Allen's football IQ, Mike Mayock spoke in an interview, I remember during his pro day, in regards to a play that ended up being a botched play. It was a pick, wasn't a pick six, it was almost a pick six. He forced Josh Allen to kind of lay out the exact scenario and forced him to see if he remembered the exact play, the exact moment. And Josh Allen remembered every single facet of that play, that moment. And Mike Mayock was just blown away. I mean, talk about a guy that knew every single situation that he has ever faced, while playing for Wyoming. He's carried that over, I think, to Buffalo, where we did see that marginal improvement from his rookie year to his second season. But he knew in order to make that next big leap and to take advantage of the players around him, the newly acquired Stephon Diggs, also a rookie wide receiver that really took the Bills by storm and took the league by storm, and Gabe Davis, Josh Allen had to go from that year 2 to year 3 mindset where anything that plagued him in year 2, whether it was his mechanics, whether it was maybe even his mentality, he shored those things up. And that's why I believe we saw that successful season, because he knew that the pressure was on. And rather than running from it, rather than trying to find, aides, whether it's the coaches or his teammates, he actually became the leader of this team. And I think that natural-born leadership, I talk about it with Josh Allen on the show all the time. Do you see him as like this new coming-of-age, natural-born leader type quarterback? I know I do, and I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
The leadership position of a quarterback is really interesting to me because unlike the NBA, where you have players who have not just leadership but authority, in the NFL, quarterbacks have a lot less authority. So leadership becomes more important. So I think it's really important that we distinguish the difference between leadership and authority. Leadership is the understanding that someone will voluntarily follow you. Authority is your ability to make someone follow you. So if you have to do what I tell you to do or you get fired, that's not leadership, that's authority. If you voluntarily decide to follow someone, that's leadership. Leadership requires submission from the other people. Authority just requires fear. And there's a big difference between those two things. And so the leadership position of the quarterback is always really interesting because I am not of the opinion you need to be a good leader to be a good quarterback in the NFL. There's plenty of good quarterbacks in the NFL who have never been lauded for their leadership skills. Ben Roethlisberger, Aaron Rodgers, No one has ever been like, gosh, what a great leader. My goodness gracious. I just love the way the team rallies around him. You know, they're fine, you know, it's whatever, but they're not lauded for that. Eli Manning was the same way. And the interesting thing for me is that you don't need to have it, but it certainly doesn't hurt. It certainly doesn't hurt when you've got it. And Josh Allen has those leadership skills because he has this leadership sacrificial mindset. This idea that I'm going to lay my body on the line for this team, right? And Stephon Diggs talked about it when they were playing Call of Duty. They said, you know, Stephon Diggs was like, I'm terrible at Call of Duty when I first signed up, and I was always get down. And Josh Allen, no matter where he was on the map, Josh Allen would run through gunfire if necessary to make sure that Stephon Diggs got revived. And Stephon Diggs is like, what are you doing? Stop where you're doing. You're going to get shot. Josh Allen's like, no, I'm going to revive you, right? It's that sort of mentality. It's this idea that I'm the most important player on the team, and I get that. I understand that quarterback's the most important player on the team, but I'm going to give up some of myself for you. I'll give up my body, right? I'll take the bullet. I'll take the heat in the media. I'll take it. It's this idea that you sacrifice for things you love. Josh Allen talks about how much he loves his teammates, right? And I've said it on the Bruce Exclusive a million times. People who are listening to this, who are also listening to that, they're going to be so sick of hearing this. But love is synonymous with sacrifice. How much you love something is directly correlative to what you are willing to give up for it. So Josh Allen is very comfortable using that L word. Most people in this society are not very comfortable using that word, but he talks about it all the time. I love my teammates, love them. And when you say things like that and you're sacrificing for them, then they believe it. And they voluntarily decide to follow you because you've shown them that you love them and you're willing to give up things for them. And you're willing to not be a prima donna, and you're willing to take the heat from the media when things go poorly, and you're willing to dive for a third down. You're willing to do those things because you don't want to let your teammates down. That's a boon. It's not a necessary boon. You don't have to have it to be a good quarterback. But I'll tell you what it helps. It helps the down times. The valleys that are going to occur, that's when that stuff matters. Because when everything's going great, it doesn't matter. Winning cures everything. Winning is the great deodorant. It covers up all the bad smells. But when things go badly, when the team loses 2 in a row on primetime to AFC contenders, it matters at that point. And it mattered in 2020 when the Bills lost to the Chiefs and the Titans back-to-back. It mattered. And when things go badly, it's going to be good that it's in Josh Allen's corner.
And it mattered very much so after the devastating loss to the Arizona Cardinals off of the Hail Murray. I remember thinking, how is this team going to bounce back from this? We have the bye week the following week. We have to sit on this loss for the next week, for 2 weeks, essentially, as we prepared for the next opponent, which was the Chargers. And we're going up against another hot young gun in Justin Herbert at that point. Chargers left a lot to be desired out on the field. They left a lot of games out on the field. They underachieved despite the fact that Justin Herbert was on fire. But I really doubted and was, well, not doubted, but I was very, very, I don't want to say pessimistic, but I didn't really have hope. I was worried in the sense that I didn't think the team could respond after that loss in a positive way. I was worried that, maybe this will be the chink in their armor. The Buffalo Bills of old will kind of return and we'll go on a losing skid. I was fearful of that. But then I thought, leading up to the Chargers game, no, this is a different team. This team has a different sense of leadership from the top down, whether it's Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, Josh Allen, some of the guys that they brought in, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis. You know, I know the run game was pretty lacking throughout the season, but Devin Singletary and Zach Moss, I think, you know, with a full off season, with a full training camp, with a normal regimen heading into hopefully this upcoming season, I'm hoping that plays a huge factor in their success this upcoming season. But they didn't lose another game, Bruce, until they played that AFC East title, or played the AFC title game against the Chiefs. They went on that magical run where that, to me, more so than the Chiefs and the Titans back-to-back losses, That loss was a game that they should not have lost. They had the lead, they blew that lead, and ultimately they got the lead back on a touchdown pass from Allen to Diggs, which was one of the best catches of the year in and of itself. And then one of the best catches I've ever seen from DeAndre Hopkins in a Hail Mary situation leads the Bills to lose prior to their bye week. And that, to me, showed the true character of Josh Allen and actually the true character of the Buffalo Bills as a whole, to not lose up until the AFC Championship game. Your thoughts on that take? I think that more than anything showed the true character of this team.
I think the bye week helped after that. Mm-hmm. I think having the bye week helped. I think that there was a debate as to whether or not the bye week would actually hurt you because you stew on it longer. But I think the bye week helped from a reset standpoint. In addition, I think the fact that that game didn't feel as fluky to me as it did to others changes my perspective on that. And the reason that is because I don't think the Bills played super well in that game.
Right.
So the fact that they were able to kind of come back at the end, like the Bills had a comeback because they didn't play that well. And they had to have a fourth quarter comeback against a team that they probably should have beaten a little bit more handily. So it was just a back and forth. And I didn't really feel that strongly that the Bills deserved to win that game. And so for me, it was really interesting to see how other people reacted to that game because yes, it was a fluky Hail Mary, but I don't necessarily know if the Bills got robbed because I'm not entirely sure they deserve to win that game altogether. So for me, it's really, really fascinating. And I think that it'd be more fascinating if the thing would have come off the rails at that point. If it would have just come off the rails as a season, I think that'd be even more fascinating because then we'd be looking at, we almost kind of forget about the Hail Mary because of what happened here. Like until you mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Hail Mary. That was a thing for like 8 seconds until the Cardinals went 8-8 and missed the playoffs. Good for you. Good for you, Cardinals. Congratulations on the highlight of your 8-8 season. But I can be snarky, right? Why not?
I love it. I love it.
Snark. No, but I think it's a good take. I think that, how your team responds in those moments is important. Having the bye week to recalibrate. And you knew that a Sean McDermott coach team was probably not going to implode.
Yeah. And that's what made me feel somewhat that reassurance, that sense of reassurance that this team is different. This team is just simply different. I saw it, leading up to when they hired Sean McDermott. I would be at the St. John Fisher training camp, watching the Rex Ryan years, the Doug Marrone years, Chan Gailey. I mean, the coaches that they ran through leading up to Sean McDermott, it was just a laundry list of just failed coach after failed coach. And the aura around Sean McDermott during his first press conference, as well as the first training camp practice. I remember calling my dad on my way back, on my drive back from Rochester. And I said, man, I'm telling you, this guy's different. There's just something. I felt it. I felt a huge difference in the whole organization, top to bottom. My dad's rolling his eyes practically over the phone saying, we'll believe it when we see it. It's the Buffalo Bills. We'll see what happens. And now even, people that didn't believe that this was the guy that see what has taken place the last 4 years and quote unquote trusting the process, they understand it. And they know that what they have done has been honest work, decent work, and has really changed the whole culture and fabric of this team. And it is a reflection, I think, of its fan base in the sense that they're a hardworking team. A lot of guys on this team were counted out, even Trey White, in the sense that he was not rated as the number one corner coming out of LSU, and arguably he probably should have been. He was an underrated NFL draft prospect, and it's crazy saying that, but in the sense that he was a first-round draft choice. But you got guys on this team that just seem to have this permanent chip on their shoulder. Trey White, Tremaine Edmonds comes into the league at 19. A lot of expectations are still on his shoulders, and he's looking to make that jump from year 3 to year 4 now. But I just love the story of how this team has come together, and I highly anticipate this season being one of their best, along with last season, finishing what we started. A lot of the guys, the Matt Milanos, the John Felicianos, Darrell Williams of the world, they signed the bottom line of that contract to come back and bringing back our own. I want your take on keeping our own and Matt Milano and John Feliciano and Darrell Williams. How pivotal is that for the Buffalo Bills here in the 2021 season?
It's a huge deal. And it's a huge deal because it allows you to do different things in the draft. When you go into the draft and you say, well, I absolutely need a right tackle, you're probably going to allow yourself to be emotionally influenced by that. And you might make a bad call. It's just better to go into the draft to be able to get the best player you can possibly find at a position you think is going to help the team. Now, I am going to say that best player available, just straight BPA, is a myth. Everyone says that. Oh, we're going to draft the best player available. No, you're not. What if the best player available is a punter? You going to draft one? No, it's a lie. It's a lie we tell ourselves. GMs do that all the time. Now, there may be certain picks that are, well, we've got these three people graded the same and positions really don't matter. Let's just take the best person we got. That's possible. Brandon Beane flat out said that Jake Fromm was a BPA pick. He didn't go into the draft intending to pick a quarterback. It was just that Jake Fromm was sticking out like a sore thumb, and they didn't have any needs they really loved in that spot, so they went ahead and took him. He openly said that he picked Dane Jackson because he thought a corner in the 7th round would have the highest propensity of making the team. That clearly means he wasn't picking the best player available. He was picking based on the needs of the team and based on roster holes and said, where can we fit somebody in? GMs do not straight pick best player available every time. It's a myth. Stop saying that.
Yeah.
So
I haven't said it.
Yes, not you. No, I'm just saying.
I know.
I'm yelling into the ether, Ryan. Sometimes when it's late at night or I've had too much to drink, the ether will stare back at me as well.
The ether's always staring back.
Always staring back into my soul. But for me, it's about being able to get the maximum amount of talent in the draft. And you do that by plugging your holes and making sure you don't have any crazy ones going into the draft, by making sure free agency gets plugged up, because I don't really like the right tackle free agent class. I don't think you were going to upgrade from Darrell Williams in free agency. You weren't going to do it. Now, I like Tevin Jenkins as a right tackle, but I don't want to need to take him at 30 because if we don't, we're screwed. Like, I don't want to need to do that. And that's what re-signing good players means. Now, if you have players who are leaving and they're not very good, then by all means, don't re-sign them, because you're re-signing someone to a market deal who is getting way more than an equivalent draft pick would get, because draft picks are cheaper. So by all means, if you have someone who's a middling player, then maybe don't resign them for a reasonable contract. Now, if they're a middling player and you can resign them for a vet minimum, then sure, let's do that. But that's one of the things that free agency is about, is not signing C players to B contracts. Don't sign B players to A contracts. And I don't think Brandon Beane did any of that. I think every single one of the contracts he gave out was reasonably valued. The John Feliciano contract was probably my least favorite, and even that was okay. It was but it was okay. But the Darrell Williams contract was great. The Matt Milano contract was great. So for me, it's about making sure that you can actually build on your foundation, because it's not being sucked away from you by good players walking out the door.
Yeah, I completely agree. What's fascinating about Brandon Beane and his ability to draw up contracts, write them up, and make them work for this team is that the Matt Milano contract, I look at it and I see a 2-year deal, essentially. I see a 2-year deal with Milano. I see like a 1-year deal with Feliciano. Essentially, they could kind of walk away from some of these contracts. They don't have to sign on the bottom line for a long period of time. And it kind of gives them that, as you said, not just the flexibility in the draft, but the flexibility in the sense that if these guys aren't good enough in what is anticipated to be a Super Bowl run type season for the Bills, they won't be back. They won't be back. They'll find someone else. They can move on. I like that somewhat. These players in this weird offseason, I shouldn't say I like it, but I like the sense from a business standpoint as a football team in bringing back their own players, bringing back their own. They actually are afforded the opportunity to say, hey, you're going to be taking less money to stay here, but you're staying in a place that you know. That's the sales pitch. You're staying in a place that you know. You're staying in a place where you know what trajectory this team is on. But if it doesn't work out, we're going to move on without you once that salary cap goes back up again. And, these players are saying, okay, I'll bet on myself. I'd rather not test the market and go to a team that I don't know, go to a city I don't know, and even if it's for more money for just this season, why risk that for only 1 year potentially? And I want your thoughts on kind of the current state of free agency with the salary cap being bumped down as much as it was. Do you get that sense that Matt Milano and John Feliciano and Darrell Williams are just saying, hey, I'll bet on myself in Buffalo for now. If it works out, great. If not, I'll find somewhere else to play.
It's simply the aspect of where do I think that I'm going to be able to maximize my earnings and maximize my value and maximize my quality of life. And part of that is the Buffalo culture and being familiar here and liking the team and liking things. That's an aspect, right? Players make those calls all the time. If it's similar money, I'd prefer to stay to a place I like. And
Right.
if the culture is bad, if it's similar money, I'm going to choose to leave. So yeah, it matters. But for them, it's about, okay, if let's assume that Brandon Beane does cut me a year from now. A year from now, how attractive am I going to be if I get to stay in Buffalo? Versus a year from now, how attractive am I going to be if I have to start over with a new system? So if I go to Houston for whatever reason, right? I go to Houston and they offer me a contract, and either way, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, either way, I could be back on the market in a year if it doesn't work out. The Broncos cut a bunch of different players who they signed last year as free agencies. Right. The Bills just did it. They cut Quentin Jefferson, who they signed to a multi-year contract last offseason during the free agency period. So a lot of these contracts end up with you back on the street fast. So if that's the case, what's going to A, decrease my probability of being back on the street? And B, if I do end up on the street, will I be the most attractive? And in most cases, that's the system I know. It's the coaches I know. It's the defense I know. It's the things I'm already familiar with. So it works out in the players' benefit because they go, listen, worst case scenario, okay? I end up back on the street in a year. That's worst case possible scenario. They cut me after a year. At least I played this year in a defense I'm good at, and I can be more attractive to other teams, because we've seen that happen. You sign a big free agency. You can't see me. I'm doing air quotes right now. A big free agency contract with another team. You go there. You're not the right fit. You have a down year. They cut you, and your next contract ain't even close to being the same value of the contract you just signed. So if I have to find myself in a terrible situation where I'm back on the street in a year, at least let me have that situation come up where I showed another year in a system I'm familiar with and a system I'm good with. And then in Brandon Beane's side, it's I would like the future flexibility. So it's future flexibility for Beane, and it is hedging against loss from a player standpoint. So it's a taking care of the worst case scenario and kind of buffing that up with the player. And in Brandon Beane, I'm retaining future flexibility. It works out for both sides.
It's a phenomenal business model that Brandon Beane has actually been able to implement prior to COVID, but especially I feel this offseason. I have to tell you, Bruce, I did not anticipate Milano, Feliciano, and Darrell Williams, all three of them coming back. And I'm not saying that like, I think it's a bad move. I'm saying it like I think it's a great move that they're able to bring back their own guys. They know how these players fit this culture, fit this roster, fit this schemes offensively and defensively. And I think that it's nice to have those three guys back in this locker room for another awesome season, hopefully. So we talked about keeping our own Milano, Feliciano, Williams, as well as the tone setter that is Sean McDermott and the leader that is Josh Allen. I want to discuss a new Buffalo Bill that I did not anticipate would be a Buffalo Bill, and that is Mitchell Trubisky, a name that you mentioned earlier in the show. Mitchell Trubisky is the new QB2. Good move or bad move? I want your take on this. I will start off, though, and I want to say, Bruce, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, we'll find out, but I think this is a great move. I was shocked by it. I didn't anticipate it. It's a one-year deal, $2.5 million. Trubisky is Allen's backup, and you can't get much better at the backup quarterback position than a quarterback that started, a 29 and 21 win-loss record. Not the greatest, but not the worst. And it's a one-year deal. I want your take on new Buffalo Bills quarterback Mitchell Trubisky.
One of the common refrains I heard from Bills fans this offseason when I pounded the table for an upgrade at QB2 was, well, if Josh Allen goes down, we're done anyway. Well, if he goes down for the entire season, yeah, you probably are. But that's not really how that works.
Right.
Usually quarterbacks, they'll pull a hammy or something like that. They'll be out for a couple weeks. And if Josh Allen would have sustained a more serious shoulder injury than he did last season, and Matt Barkley had to come in and start 4 games, the Bills aren't probably the number 2 seed. That matters.
No. Yeah,
now their playoff path is a little bit more difficult, and maybe they have to play the Kansas City Chiefs earlier than later. This stuff matters. Backup quarterback matters. If you're going to say, this is my favorite illogical statement, quarterback's the most important position in sports. Great. I don't care about the backup quarterback. What?
I've said the exact same thing. I've said that if the QB1 is the most important position on the roster, QB2 is the second most, or is the first most, I should say, important backup position on the roster, right? Doesn't that make sense?
It makes reasonable sense to me. And to me, you have to balance that against playing time and probabilities. But the fact of the matter is, there have been plenty of championship caliber teams who have made deep playoff runs who have needed to rely on their backup for a couple games. The Saints have done it year after year. The Chiefs had to do it when Patrick Mahomes went down and Matt Moore came in.
Yep.
The Eagles managed to make it all the way to a Super Bowl victory with their backup quarterback. Now, I recognize that's a statistical outlier, okay? I'm not saying Mitchell Trubisky is going to come in late in the season and lead us to a Super Bowl victory. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that those extra 3 to 4 games, what if one of them is a wild card game? What if one of those games is a wild card game and you need a quarterback who can actually play to make sure you don't go home? That matters. Yep. If you're going to tell me, you know me, wins are not a quarterback stat. We've established this before, right?
Yep.
Wins are not a quarterback stat. But if you're going to tell me that quarterback play is a huge part of winning, then you cannot simultaneously tell me the backup quarterbacks don't matter. You just can't. It is logically reprehensible for you to do so. So for me, I was not comfortable having Matt Barkley as the backup quarterback of this team. And everyone talked about, well, he's a good guy. He's a mentor for Josh. Listen, Josh Allen's going to year 4. If he still needs a mentor, something is horribly wrong.
Right.
Josh Allen should be mentoring, not being mentored at this point.
Right.
He knows Brian Dable's offense better than anybody except for Brian Dable at this point. So I don't need Matt Barkley to be a cheerleader. I need him to actually be able to play well if called upon. And I didn't have any faith in Matt Barkley's ability to do that. And I like Matt Barkley, but it's time to understand that when you have a team who's not expected to do anything, having a backup quarterback who isn't extremely effective doesn't really matter as much. But when you have a team who has Super Bowl aspirations, I'll be darned if that's going to be derailed by Josh Allen going down for 3 weeks. Nuh-uh. Nope. Get me a quarterback who can play. I'm perfectly happy with Mitchell Trubisky.
I completely agree, and I love the whole. I literally thought the exact same thing. I don't want this season to go up in smoke because Josh Allen was out for 2-3 weeks. I fully realized that Mitch Trubisky did not live up to expectations in Chicago, but I think if you put any of those rookie quarterbacks in that situation, whether it was Trubisky, dare I even say it Watson, dare I even say it Mahomes, if you put those guys in that situation that Trubisky was in Chicago, they would not be the players that they are with their current team. I think that's a very safe assessment on how bad the Chicago Bears have been as an organization the last 4 or 5 years. And I think that Mitch Trubisky needed this opportunity. I think he's going to take advantage of it in the sense that he's got 1 year on his contract, comes into this organization, well-run organization now, far different than years past, and he's going to learn this offense. And who's to say, Bruce, that another team doesn't lose a quarterback in the preseason? Buffalo could use Mitch Trubisky as potential trade bait. They could use him as a trade piece for a pick. Maybe Mitch Trubisky isn't even the backup quarterback of the Buffalo Bills, depending on who could get hurt. Let's just say Jimmy Garoppolo blows out his knee again, and San Fran needs a quarterback. They don't want to roll with the Nick Mullins experiment anymore. Maybe they send us a 4th-round pick for Mitch Trubisky. I would take that. What do you say to that whole thought process?
I don't know if I'd want to give him up. I think the insurance policy is too valuable for a 4th-round pick.
I would agree with that.
Can I get a backup quarterback? Can I get a backup quarterback for this year for a 4th-round pick that I acquire at training camp? Nope.
Yeah.
So if I just finish saying that the value of Mitchell Trubisky comes in your ability to have a reasonable insurance policy, flipping him for a draft pick is good resource allocation. It is. Spending $2.5 million, not having to pay out a significant portion of it, and then trading him for a 4th-round pick. Yeah, sure, that's great from a resource allocation standpoint. But it defeats the purpose of having Mitchell Trubisky entirely, which was having him as an insurance policy. So let's say you do flip him. Davis Webb now becomes your guy?
No. Oh, God. That wouldn't be good.
So for me, don't get me wrong. Everything has a price, right?
Yep.
If you come beating down my door and say, I literally can't handle it. Here are 14 first-round picks for Mitchell Trubisky. Oh, okay. Well, anything's for sale, right?
What if a team offered you a second for Mitch Trubisky? Let's just say that, hypothetically.
I don't think anyone would do it because otherwise they would have just signed that player, but I'd have to do it. I'd have to. I'd have to. Because, listen, everything has value to a point. Everything is a value proposition. It's what you give versus what you get. Everything is a value proposition. So everything is this gradient slider as far as value propositions go. 2nd-round pick's pretty good for a team that needs to make sure it stays under cap because it's going to pay its money, its quarterback a lot. And at that point, here's the thing. At that point in the offseason, there may still be backup quarterbacks out on the street who are better than Barkley.
Yeah,
that's a possibility.
That's my thought process in the sense that there are quarterbacks that are pretty decent, little bit better than Barkley, usually at that 3rd, 4th week point of the preseason, maybe even sooner, depending on who got hurt. It's a likely scenario, but it's obviously a what-if scenario in the sense that if a team loses a starting quarterback for the majority of the season or all of the season, I think a GM would look at the league and say, which team has a young backup that has adequate starting experience? Buffalo. That's one of the only teams that does. So that's a thought that crossed my mind. Maybe I'm playing a little bit too much Madden. I don't know. But
well, I mean, let's say Colt McCoy's still out there, right? Let's say Colt McCoy is still out there on the street, and someone blows out their knee the first week in training camp, and someone offers the Bills good for Mitch Trubisky. If I have the ability to flip Mitchell Trubisky for a pick and then immediately turn around and sign Colt McCoy, well, yeah, that's great. But then why wouldn't that team have just signed Colt McCoy? You know what I mean? Like it's threading the needle of hypotheticals in a way that'd be hard for me to picture it actually happening.
True. Yeah, I agree with you there. It's definitely a what if scenario, hypothetical scenario, but it's one that crossed my mind. And, I want your final take on this before we wrap things up here. The AFC East last year was our division. We reigned supreme over the AFC East. We went 6-0, first time in Buffalo Bills franchise history, smashed the Dolphins, smashed the Jets, smashed the Patriots, smashed them all, really. 13-3, 6-0 in the division. This AFC East, the ESPNs, the CBS sports networks, the major sports networks, they are lauding the Patriots, saying that the Patriots will be AFC East favorites. Guys like Mike Greenberg beg to differ, but they say that Patriots are going to be a much better team. Saying that the Jets are going to be a much better team. That B-Flow, Brian Flores, is leading a positive movement there in Miami. What do you say to this notion that the Buffalo Bills are one-and-done AFC East champs and that any other team could come and take this division from the Bills in 2021?
I haven't seen it the way that you've seen it. I have not seen that disrespect for the Buffalo Bills as AFC East championships. Now, I have seen the national media pundits praise the Patriots and the Jets, the Dolphins for getting better. And that's true. I think they did get better. But I haven't seen that widespread enough for it to percolate into my mental processing and for me to be like actually upset enough for me to like go off on some sort of legendary rant on your podcast here, bring down fire and brimstone, because I haven't seen it. Now, if there are people out there who think that the Patriots are going to be better in 2021, they probably are. But the Patriots weren't a very talented team in 2020. The fact that they made it to 7-9 is nothing short of a miracle because they weren't a very talented team. Their best players were interior offensive linemen. That was their best players on their team. Cam Newton was terrible last year. Their weapons were basically non-existent last year. So yes, the Patriots got better, but let's be honest, it'd be kind of hard for them to be worse from a talent perspective. So of course they got better. They had a ton of cap space and they weren't very talented. So of course they got better. Now, I haven't seen people who are willing to christen the Patriots or the Dolphins or the Jets as AFC East championships in a significant enough way for me to classify it as a narrative. At this point, if I see it, I consider it to be an outlier. If it starts to become a narrative, then you can trust that crazy Uncle Bruce will bring down fire and brimstone from the pulpit upon the heads. There will be pounding and gnashing of teeth, weeping out into the audience. And I will see to it that I have a few choice, select, robust dialogue words for those individuals if I happen to come across it.
So the Patriots, yeah, I agree with you that they will get better. They are better. On paper, they're better, of course. But they still have the same problem that they had in 2020 in that Cam Newton is their quarterback. And on paper, it's trending that way. Maybe at some point during the season, they do roll out the Jarrett Stidham Express train, try to get him some starts, try to get him some snaps. I don't know. But you look at the Cam Newton contract, and it dictates if he gets 60% of the snaps, 70% of the snaps, 80% of the snaps, he's going to get those incentives. Will the Patriots allow him to play that high percentage of snaps? Really, it depends on how good Cam Newton is or how much better he is. Do you see Cam Newton being that much better with Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, as well as Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar on the Patriots as new additions? Do you see Newton being better this year in comparison to last year and better enough to challenge the Buffalo Bills?
Better? Yes. Better enough? No. Right. I don't think better enough, because part of Cam Newton's struggles were the fact that he didn't have any real weapons last year. But the other part of Cam Newton's struggles are the fact that his arm looks like it's completely shot. Yes. And if that continues moving forward, then it doesn't matter if you have good weapons. All the weapons in the world can't help you if you're skipping passes to him like stones. It doesn't matter. So part of Cam Newton's, again, we talk about the whys, right? Why are you this way? Why are you Well, why was Cam Newton bad in 2020? Well, part of that was the fact the Patriots didn't have good weapons. And that part is better. But part of it is something that I don't think is going to get better. I'll believe it when I see it. But part of it is something I don't think is going to get better. And that's Cam Newton might be toast. And I don't know if that's necessarily going to get better.
Physically, he's nowhere near the quarterback that he was. And physically, at his best, he was pretty damn good. He was one of those guys that ushered in this sort of new era of NFL quarterbacks that I anticipated coming out of college. He would be around and dominate. I don't think he's fully fulfilled his potential. He's underachieved. And for the Patriots to go from Tom Brady to Cam Newton in terms of leadership and taking on the reins of an organization, what a complete polar opposite style of quarterback they are, in the sense that when the going gets tough, Tom Brady's firing up his teammates. When the going gets tough for Cam Newton, he just sits on the bench and just kind of looks wide-eyed like a deer in the headlights and somewhat quits on himself and ultimately his teammates. So it's an extremely tough sell, despite the fact that they brought in Hunter Henry, despite the fact that they brought in Jonnu Smith, two tight ends that I think are decent. They paid him a lot of money, Bruce, a lot of money, because they have to pay those guys a lot of money. And that's another part of this narrative with the Patriots, is the sense that, oh, wow, the Patriots went out and spent boatloads of money. Not only did they have cap space, they could, but they have to overpay for players because they don't have an attractive quarterback in the sense that they did with Tom Brady. And you go across the way down south, I guess you could say, in Florida and Tampa Bay, you got guys taking pay cuts of a Super Bowl winning team because they're still playing, they're coming back with Tom Brady, where guys aren't going to take pay cuts to play with Cam Newton. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that getting better is good. Getting better efficiently is better. And the Patriots did get better, but they certainly didn't get better efficiently. The two most significant guarantees given out to tight ends in the history of mankind were given out by the Patriots last week.
Yep.
You can't say they got better efficiently. They did get better, but it's a little bit like trying to kill a spider with a flamethrower. Yes, you killed the spider. Congratulations. Now you have to put out the fire. Well, I don't have to worry about the fire. I killed the spider. Well, okay. Yes, that's true. You did. Congratulations. And as much as the kill it with fire mentality is fairly prevalent in this society when it comes to spiders, you shouldn't kill a spider with a flamethrower. And that's a little bit like what the Patriots did. So, yes, they got better. They didn't get better more efficiently. And so that might help them this year. But efficiency always comes back to bite you in the end. So you might understand that Bill Belichick doesn't really care because he might not be there when this stuff comes back to bite him. So do they really need to get better efficiently? Not if he's not going to be there. So you put all this stuff together. He's pulling a Magic Johnson. He's kind of shaking his head going, I'm not going to be here. You know, that's what it is like with Bill Belichick right now. So I think they're all in to try and limp together a reasonable team this particular year. And heck with it if it's inefficient and it causes us problems down the road.
Right. He'll just wave the whole team goodbye anyway and say, hey, my work here is done. You know, I've already won the 6 Super Bowls that I won. I don't really have anything to prove. If this season blows up in his face, it's really no skin off of BB's back. So I'm excited to see how it materializes. Bruce, over or under on this one? This is, you know, not a reality take point of view. I want your over or under. Will Tua be the Dolphins quarterback in 5 years? Well, you could say not over under, yay or nay to that. Will he still be in Miami in 5 years?
No.
Tua. I agree. I want your take as to why, though.
Oh, I'm going to say it's because from the beginning, there was conflict with whether or not he was the starting quarterback, whether or not he was ready. And that kind of stuff doesn't have a tendency to work out. Yeah. You know, I got into some robust conversations with some Dolphins fans when Brian Flores was constantly putting Tua in, yanking him, putting him in, yanking him. And I said, listen, he's trying to have his cake and eat it too, and he's going to get both. He's going to get neither one when he wants to get both. He wants to develop Tua and make the playoffs. And what's going to happen is he's going to do neither. And sure enough, that's what happened. He didn't get significant amounts of reps from Tua the way he would have if he would have rolled him out. And he missed the playoffs. When you try to serve two masters, sometimes you serve none. And that's what happened with the Miami Dolphins. And things like that just don't have a tendency to end up going well. How many scenarios has that gone well? You remember Matt Leinart and Kurt Warner with a 2-quarterback system in Arizona? How did that work out?
It didn't work out good.
So when you put your guy in, he's your guy, period. He's your guy until he proves he's not. And I've never came up with a scenario where it's worked out any other way. So for me, I'm going to go on the side of history and say no.
Will the New York Jets trade Sam Darnold?
Yes.
This offseason. You think they will?
I do. I think the temptation of a new rookie deal and resetting that rookie window is too great. Plus, you don't know if you're going to be picking number 2 overall. Mm-hmm. Because if you're a good coach and you have a more talented team, you might limp your way to 6-10 or 7-9. And now you're outside the realm of being able to get good quarterbacks. A lot of people don't like the 2022 class of quarterbacks as much as the 2021 class of quarterbacks. Right. So because of that, you might be lower in a class of quarterbacks you don't like as much, and you missed your window.
Right.
So for me, I have a hard time imagining that you're going to get a team who has a new coach come in and says, nah, I don't want my guy. I'll take the old guy. It's fine. So I say, yeah. If you hold a gun to my head, I say they flip Sam Darnold.
I think they will too. I agree with your point 100%. I think in the sense that Robert Saleh wants his own guy. I think that's a big part of it. And really, I mean, for as bad as Adam Gase was, Sam Darnold was just as bad on the field. And whether that's fully Sam Darnold's fault or not, sometimes we run into scenarios, we run into cases where it's just better if a player starts over. And I think that it will only plague Sam Darnold more the longer he stays with the Jets, despite the fact that, yeah, on paper, you know, as we talked about with New England, they improved. Corey Davis is a decent player. Keelan Cole, mid-tier guy. Carl Lawson, nice pass rusher. But will that really drastically change the New York Jets from basement dwellers to, you know, knocking on the door of the playoffs? with or without Sam Darnold, I don't think they're knocking on the door of the playoffs. So, it's a transitional year for the Jets, and I highly anticipate this being Buffalo's division to win or Buffalo's division to lose, depending on how you want to look at it. I just don't see a scenario where any one of those three teams challenges Buffalo. And it's largely due to the fact that Buffalo has not only the best coach, but the best quarterback in the division, to your point earlier. And yeah, I think this defense is actually going to be a lot better than what it was last year. Hopefully with a normal offseason, right? AJ Epinesa makes that next step. Ed Oliver makes that next step. We pair Trey White alongside a better CB2. Nothing against Dane Jackson, nothing against Levi Wallace, but I'd love to see a guy that a defense can't pick on that plays alongside Trey White. Whether they get that guy in the draft, I think they can. Remains to be seen which one they'll go with. But what are your thoughts on the whole thought of maybe taking a corner in the first round of this year's draft?
I love the idea. Yeah, I am never going to say no to more cover men, Ryan.
Right.
At no point will I say no to more cover men. I love me some defensive backs. So sign me up for a corner outside at 30 and then a nickel defender at 61. Sign me up for both. Yeah, right. So for me, I'm absolutely on board. And this is a good class to do it. But the inverse of that is it's a good class. Therefore, take an edge at 30 and maybe trade up from 61 or sit there at 61 and understand that there's going to be a good player at corner who's probably going to be there at 61. Right. So having a really good class gives you two diametrically opposed opinions. Take one early because it's a really good class, or wait on one because it's a really good class.
Right. I love it. I think we see eye to eye, man. I'm really enjoying the interaction with you today on the show. This was awesome, Bruce. And we went a little bit over our time. My apologies for that. But it was great content, great conversation, Bruce. And thank you for hopping on the show today.
Thanks for having me, dude.
Yeah, this was a real pleasure. And folks, check out the Bruce exclusive, BuffaloRumblings.com. Great podcast. Bruce is an awesome podcaster. Hopefully one day I get to meet him. I won't reveal his identity if I do. I'm just running that by you, Bruce.
I appreciate your discretion, Ryan.
If we do ever meet in person, face to face, I will not reveal your identity to the world. We'll keep it between you and I.
Well, now there's audio recording of you doing that. So, now if you actually do, I'll bring the Twitterverse down on you if you do it. Cause you reneged on your promise here.
Scout's honor. I keep my promises. I'm a man of my word, and I would look forward to meeting you one day. It was a great conversation, and I'm excited to chat with you again sometime soon.
Catch you soon, man.
Catch you soon. Take care, Bruce. That was Bruce Nolan, Bruce exclusive of the Buffalo Rumblings. Greatly enjoyed interacting with Bruce. He's a guest that I've wanted on the show for quite some time. Someone that is very informed as far as everything that takes place at One Bills Drive. He's got great opinions that he backs up with facts, speaks extremely well. You saw a lot of passion in that episode of the Thomas Take Sports podcast between two guys that love talking about this team, two guys that love covering this team on their respective podcasts. So thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. I'm Ryan Thomas. Not one, not two, but three guests today on the show. Lou Michelle, Dan Fates, and Bruce Nolan. Awesome day for the show. Take care, everybody. Stay safe and go Bills.